You would be hard pushed to find a tier list anywhere on the internet that would rank the Carthaginian Empire, led by none other than Dido herself, as absolute garbage tier. Let's talk what is renowned for being the worst civilization to play in Sid Meier's Civilization 5. My name is JumboPixel. Let's jump straight into it. But before we do, every like that this video gets gives Dido 1 extra combat strength, so do consider donating to Dido today and turning that thumb blue. Now, Dido's starting bias is coastal tiles, and that's really, really important because the only thing that Dido and the Carthaginians have going for them is their powerful boat in the small window of time where it's powerful, their free harbours, and that's kind of it. They do also have a very interesting African forest war elephant, which will cover a little bit later. But anyway, let's start with their unique civilization ability. So, when you're playing as Carthage, have the Phoenician heritage unique ability. That means that all coastal cities get a maintenance-free harbour, built immediately inside of the city as soon as it's founded. You don't need to research compass to get the harbours. However, in order for the city connection to be established, that quote-unquote connection that feeds you extra gold and yields and so on and so forth, you do need to have the wheel technology unlocked, which is a little bit odd, but you're probably going to be getting wheels early enough anyway, so not a huge deal, but something to bear in mind. Also, as Carthage, after gaining your first Great General, all land units can walk over mountain tiles. This is a little bit funky, largely not particularly useful, unless you happen to be on a map with a lot of mountains. But if you're playing to Carthage's early game strength with their unique trireme replacement, you're probably going to be playing on a map with lots of ocean and less concerned about mountains. So there's a real anti-synergy here, except for in very few cases where you're playing on a mountainous, also ocean-filled map. It's rare, it could happen, but generally there's an anti-synergy there. However, once you do unlock your first Great General and get that promotion to cross mountain tiles, your units will take half of their health. That's 50 hit points of damage if they end their turn on the mountain. So you have to be very careful not to end your turn on a mountain. It can be quite dangerous. You need to make sure you have enough movement points left. It's fun to have, and there's a slight synergy with the war elephant, which I might as well cover now. So the African forest elephant replaces the horseman for Carthage. It's unlocked, of course, at horseback riding, and it'll later upgrade into the knight. It is about 33% more expensive, but it is slightly stronger. You get an extra 2 combat strength. You also get a really interesting, unique promotion. It provides a 10% combat penalty for adjacent enemy land units. It's called Feared Elephant. So that's kind of fun. And of course, you don't need horses to build these because they are elephants. However, you don't need elephants, so don't stress. You just don't need horses. It's a little bit odd, but it is what it is. There are other bonuses that they have a 100% increased contribution to Great General generation. So once you get these bad boys, you'll get your Great General that little bit quicker. Now, it's hard to find strengths with Dido. And often when people say to me, Dido, she's pretty good, I say don't. I say don't for a reason, because Carthage is not a fantastic civ. However, their trireme replacement is interesting. But when you listen to me talk about this, and when you're considering whether you think it's worth a go, let me just caveat that by saying that, of course, the trireme is in general not a particularly good or useful unit. It's unlocked very early in the game. It's a melee-only naval unit. Naval units in Civ tend to be worse anyway because maps tend not to favour ocean, and it's unlikely that in the very early game you're going to have the production spare to build a lot of these early naval units. However, with civilizations like Carthage, you have to play to your strengths. And this unit is one of your strengths, and you'll see that in the video where I try and demonstrate the power of the quinquireme, very difficult to say, which replaces the trireme. Let's talk about it, because you're probably going to want to make use of it alongside 1 or 2 war elephants. So as I say, it's unlocked with sailing very early on, upgrades from the galley and into the caravel. It replaces the trireme, so it's your early game naval unit. Once your opponents unlock galleasses, they will wreck this unit though, so it doesn't last for long, as I say. It's One-off positive bonus, there really is only one change to it from the trireme, and it's a 30% combat strength buff. That's up from 10 to 13. That might not sound like much, but actually a 30% buff is really strong and compares only, I think, to maybe the one of the unique bowman units. I don't think it's the English bowman. I think it might be Byzantium. Yeah, I'm not sure. But either way, 30% bonus, very strong. And you'll probably want to make use of it if you can. So I would recommend that you play on a naval map. You build a few of these ships and you go and crush one of your opponents because the 30% combat strength buff, really useful. However, of course, when we consider how useful this is across difficulty levels, the higher the difficulty you're playing on, you're going to find this really, really, really tough. At lower and middle difficulties, it could be okay, but because Carthage is built so heavily towards the early game, with their unique unit that replaces the horsemen, and their unique naval unit that replaces the trireme, at higher difficulties where the AI spawns with 3 or 4 times the military power of you and 3 times the number of settlers, and their general outputs, like their production and their science, are buffed as well, you're not going to have the time to ramp up and actually use these units. And that is one of the huge downfalls to playing as Carthage. Not only is Carthage a relatively weak, in fact, most players would say F tier, garbage tier civ. Not only does it have a few anti-synergies, and the synergies it does have aren't particularly useful, right? If you want better great generals, play as China. If you want better boats and to dominate people with, play as England. There are a raft, pun intended, of other civilizations you could play as, and Carthage is really limited by the fact that they're really only useful in that early game. Now let's talk strategy. Building on that, I think that their usefulness in the early game should be a big part of your strategy, okay? You need to harness these elephants and these boats, and domination is going to be one of the only ways early on anyway that you can make significant progress and actually outperform the AI, because you just don't have benefits elsewhere. So I really recommend playing towards a domination or economic centered victory. So either dominate, take a few capitals early, build yourself up an advantage, build your science up, and then in the later game, nuke them and take them, or whatever your strategy is later on. Or you could go the diplomatic route, but you need to be careful, of course, because you're going to naturally be a bit of a warmonger playing as Carthage, because it's your only real strength in the earlier game. So your international trade and diplomacy is going to be with city-states and city-states only. So do make sure, if you're going around rampaging like I am here, that you leave some city-states alive, but do take the ones close to you, because it's free settlers and free cities, and you need that benefit. In terms of other gameplay features, they're not a particularly scientific or cultural civ, but your policies are quite important. I would recommend going with the honor warmongering opener. Honor is really useful for you, not only to help you build up some culture, but also to buff your great generals and your other units as well. You have some pretty good promotions on your elephants included, so why not train them up? Liberty is the other good one for you. It will allow you to go wide, assuming you're taking some cities, and also reduce some of the unhappiness that you'll be earning, probably when you're taking at least 1 or 2 of your city-state neighbors. Patronage and exploration are also good ones to explore, and of course, when you're in that build-up phase in the middle of the game, rationalism is going to be really useful for you. Rationalism, always useful. Ideology seems like a no-brainer. Order is the logical pick. Autocracy, also not bad. Some common mistakes I see people playing when they're playing as Carthage: ending your turn on mountains. I've covered it already, but just don't do it. The 50 HP attrition damage, that's half your health, never worth it, because chances are you're probably crossing a mountain to attack a city, and the city will probably just kill you. So really do take care, okay? It's something that you have to be really cautious with. Really, really cautious with. So don't just focus all your strategy around the mountain play. I see people do that. Oh, this is cool, this is fun. It's All it is just like crossing a normal tile with a risk that you lose half your health when you end the turn on it. Only cross them where absolutely necessary, I would say. One other thing that it pays to mention, you are playing a coastal city, so don't neglect your defense. You can use your ships for that, but also maybe have some ranged units on land. And then finally, don't ignore roads, because you may need to run across that land. You can't just sail everywhere. That concludes my guide to probably the worst civ in the game. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.